Let's see if this is going to work. Hello, I am Barbara Benson. I am an independent knitwear designer. Oh, there we go. Okay, I can see it. I am an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make like videos here on YouTube, and I am also not the most technologically savvy individual on the face of the earth. Hello, Tracy. So glad you're here from Kansas. And Elizabeth. Hey, Elizabeth. I'm so glad you're here. And Celeste. Wow, you guys are like I know all of you. Like y'all, I feel like I know you. So that's fairly cool. So, I mentioned that I was on vacation. I was in Orlando. It was kind of vacation. I was with family when I set this up. So I used my phone to set it up. But I knew I was going to be home today, so I had intended on just, doing my normal broadcast from my home. But apparently, if you schedule the live broadcast on your phone, you have to broadcast from your phone. So for the last 15 minutes, I have been scrambling to figure out how to set up my phone so that I could do the broadcast. And I did have it horizontal, and I pushed live, and it said either change the orientation of your live stream or rotate your phone. And since I have no earthly idea how to change the orientation of my live stream, I went with rotating my phone. So we're going to be vertical today, and I'm sorry if that causes any problems for anybody. And like the text down here is going by super fast, and it's tiny. So I'm going to be looking over. I also have it pulled up on my computer. So I'm going to be over here. So I'm gonna have to look way over here to talk to y'all because the phone's over here and the thing's over here, and it's just a hot mess. Hello, Susan. Thank you for joining me from Ohio. Hello, Sally Thibodeau, my Louisiana person. Gotta love that. Hello, my golfer. Good evening. And Debbie in sunny Wisconsin, 75 degrees. I am so jealous. I'm very, very jealous of 75 degrees. Is very hot here. It's like hot, like extra hot. So, hello, Linda in Illinois. Very excited. Oh, I do not like this different interface. And you can, to watch, this is going to drive me crazy. So, to watch the chat, the window also, I'm watching myself, but I myself am on like a couple second delay, from, and oh my God, that's really disorienting. Hey, wait a minute. Now, what happens if no, that's just going to flip it around and you're not going to be seeing anything. So that's nutso. Hello, Barbara Brian Wilson. Another month. Yeah. I mean, it just flew by. It's just like, oh, July's done. It was so fast. I'm used to doing horizontal those, but so when I look over here and I see me on my time delay, I notice that you're actually seeing substantially more of my body than you normally see. So I'm very glad I put on pants today. But it's gonna be, and a lot of times, uh especially in my videos, I talk with my hands, and I try really hard not to, but I have a hard time not talking with my hands. So a lot of times in the videos that you watch on my channel, I'm still gesturing with my hands, but I'm doing it under, like I do it down. Normally I would be up here gesturing, but I'll drop it down so it's out of the like view of the camera, so y'all won't get too distracted by all my hand gestures. And I'm afraid with this vertical, there's really nowhere for me to hide my hands. So that's just going to be happening today. Hello, Stitch Itch Soupy in Virginia. It has been pouring. Oh my gosh, some of the storms in Orlando were pretty bad. Hello, Heather Goughh. Gough. I want to say Gogh, like Van Gogh, but I'm sure that it's like Gog or something like that. You never know how people's names are pronounced. Um, oh, you're in Great Britain. Hello, Heather in Great Britain. That is so cool. I am doing great. I hope you are doing well as well. Actually, the tie-in for the Great Britain situation, Linda wanted You get to see your grandkids. That is so cool. Wait a minute. Did I miss something? Hello, Heidi in Alabama. So good to see you. It's not over 100, but you know what? It's one of those, it's like, yeah, it's one thing, but it feels like the other. It can be a lot higher. So one of the reasons I was in Orlando was I was seeing my family, because my brother and his family recently, and by recently I mean within the last like 2 to 3 weeks, just relocated. They were living in Switzerland for several years and they just came back. And while they were in Switzerland, my niece graduated from high school and then went to university in the United Kingdom. She goes into Brighton. And so, but she was in Brighton for 2 years, and now she's doing what they call the gap year or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it is. And she has, and she managed to get an internship with Disney World. So we were up in Orlando to help move her into her dorm and get her oriented for her internship with Disney. And we're so very proud of her. And she is super excited because this is like what she wants to do. She wants to, she is working on her degree in international business affairs. So this, and Disney is a really, really good opportunity for that. So that is why we were up well, we were up there to see them because we're like, yeah, you're back from Switzerland, but also really excited about my niece's opportunity and her achievement because they lots and lots and lots of young people go for those Disney internships, and she got one of them. So super proud of her. Let's see. Hello, Karen. Oh, it's not working. Well, thank you, Karen, for joining us. And I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm having some serious technical issues today too, Karen. As you can notice, I am vertical and I'm having to look at a different screen for the chat. And it's just a crazy, crazy mess. And so it's super fun. So, but since we were in Orlando, the Orlando area, we were in Kissimmee, technically. We went to Ikea. Like you do, because my brother who just came back wanted to get some things at IKEA, and because I have problems with acquiring bags, I want to show you guys the bag I got from IKEA. Look at it. So you know the standard plastic IKEA bag that you can buy, it's like $1.99 or something, and it's the yellow one for if you actually feel like you have to have something because they don't provide bags. But this is this little baby one. Look how cute it is. So it's your standard, it's like a shrunk down version of your IKEA bag, but awesomely rainbowed. And it was 99 cents. I feel like I should be proud of myself that I only grabbed one of them because it was 99 cents. And I'm like, but it's a good size bag. I mean, it's your standard IKEA. It's made out of this recycled plastics business, and it's a big one. It's big enough to go on the head, but it's nowhere near the size of the giant yellow ones or blue ones. Sometimes they're yellow, sometimes they're blues, but I'm super excited about my rainbow bag. Have you seen the videos of the people on New York City passed a law that you can't have dogs on the subway unless they're being carried in a bag. And there are people who've taken the giant IKEA bags and cut 4 holes in the corners and put so they can carry their dog like on their shoulder, and they're like carrying like big dogs like that. It's hilarious. This is for smaller. This is the IKEA tote for medium-sized dogs. So that would be hilarious. Okay, so Heather says the GH in your name is pronounced like a double F. So it'd be golf. Golf? Maybe? Very cool. Welsh is one of those, Welsh has an excess of vowels, I believe. There's like certain of the different languages in the United Kingdom that is like some of them have way too many consonants and some of them have way too many vowels. And Goch, that's a cool name. Yeah, the color is the best. 99 cents. Can you beat a bag for 99 cents? I mean, you can't beat a bag for 99 cents. It's so cute. You're a beginner knitter. You can't cast on stitches as your mom. Oh, you know what? I have found that a lot. I've run into quite not a lot, but quite a few people that the sticking point in learning how to knit was to learning how to cast on, and that someone would just do it, and they once it was on the needles they could just go. And I always thought that was a little on the like sketch side, because I'm like, if you can't start it, you can't start it, until I tried to learn how to weave, and then I was like, I will pay someone to warp the loom because I don't know how to do that at all. Warping the loom is really like a whole world of not fun for me. But there are some fairly straightforward. The easiest one, if you do know how to knit, the easiest cast on is the knitted cast on. The easiest cast on that I'd recommend, because the easiest cast on there is the backwards loop cast on, and I don't recommend it because it's easy to get on the needles, but then knitting into it is a giant pain in the tuchus. But if you go to my well, hang on, let me pull up. I'm gonna pull up my YouTube, and here. Here is a super fast video on how to, that is the cable cast on. And I find that the cable cast on is actually a really relatively easy to execute. It's one step more stable than the knitted cast on, which the knitted cast on is super easy, but it's a little loosey-goosey. The cable cast on is just like one step up from that. And since you already can knit, going with a knitted cast on might be a really good choice for you, Heather. So you can try that. And I put that link in there. Did it go through? I did hit enter, didn't I? Hello, Hannah's Crafty. Oh, there's a bigger stripy one? Oh, Hannah, there's the bigger stripy one. I want the bigger rainbow one too. I want all the rainbow ones. I love how bright the colors are. It's just, and it's plastic. It's not going nowhere. Okay. So, okay. Okay, Velvet Plans has a question. Yay! I am borrowing your big book. Okay. So Big Yarn Beautiful Lace Knits. That is very cool. I'm glad you are getting use from your local public library. I'm taking a break from knitting because of the pain, but once I'm back, I'm excited to make some of your patterns. What is my favorite pattern from that book? So that's kind of a rude question. It's kind of like asking what's your favorite child, maybe? But I just so happen to have it handy. So I'm gonna say, I mean, I like a lot of the patterns, and it really depends on what you want to make. But and this is, anyone who's seen the book might be surprised when I tell you that my favorite pattern from this book is this one right here. It's called Asymmetrical Balance, and it's a long scarf. And here's what it looks like. I just love the balance of this scarf. I love how the lace, one of my goals with this book was to move lace into a different visual genre, if you will. When anyone thinks of lace, they think of delicate, they think of airy, they think of the Estonian lace, they think of the Shetland lace. You think of these beautiful, feminine, lacy pieces. I mean, the word lacy is synonymous with lingerie and the lacy shawls and things that are traditionally thought of as being pretty, 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 and feminine. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with pretty, pretty, and feminine and things like that. If you look at my work, I have plenty of pieces that I've designed that would fall into that category. But why I was playing with the bulky yarn and knitting lace in it is because when you knit lace in these bulkier yarns, it moves it out of that pretty, pretty place and into a more graphic or almost pop art-y kind of effect. And one of my goals, agenda, if you will, that I have had for quite some time is to get more men wearing lace, and moving lace into a more gender neutral kind of space where it's just it's not in that same aesthetic. And so I really, in this book, very deliberately did some more gender neutral and pieces that really takes the lace into a very different place. And I just really, this is my aesthetic, this kind of balance, this kind of how there's the positive space and the negative space, and how the holes balance. It's just, everything about that is what I love. So while it's not like the fanciest piece or the most elaborate piece, that is my favorite. You said favorite. I don't even necessarily know it's the best piece, but it's my personal favorite. Your guess would have been the cover pattern. So the cover, let me tell you, selecting a cover is a whole ordeal. A whole ordeal, and it involves a lot of different people, and not my just my opinion. And I like the cover piece, don't get me wrong, I am a big fan of the cover piece, but there's absolutely no way they would have let me put a man on the cover of this knitting book. They just, now they did photograph it. Is a photograph of it on, you know what? It's only in one spot. They did photograph it on the woman, but because I was specifically trying to, no, they didn't. It's only crafted. There's absolutely no way. There's absolutely no way they would have let me put a man on the cover, because there are a few more masculine pieces in the book, but women are the target market, even though I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that we should embrace all of the knitters of all of the genders that want to knit themselves stuff. But there's no way they would have let me put that on there. Harriet, you crochet chunky wrist warmers with lace pattern and your chap loves them. You'd be surprised how men love this style. See, that's what I'm thinking. All you got to do is show it to them and then they know. But if you had specifically said, hey, I'm going to knit or crochet you a lace X, most of them are going to get a little about it. Oh, that's your favorite too, Elizabeth? Aw, thank you. Now, the other one I really like, I mean, I like all the patterns. I mean, I wouldn't have made them if I didn't like them. But this one, I just feel it's just a behemoth. This shawl out of Rasta is just, because it's the bulkiest yarn I use, I just feel it really emphasized how different lace can look and how big and chunky it can look. And the other thing I love about it is literally, let's see, 12, 24, the entire pattern is literally 39 rows. The whole shawl is 39 rows. There are 3 rows of there's 3 rows of setup, a 12-row chart, a 12-row chart, and an 11-row chart. And that's it. That's like the whole shebang. You work each chart once, and that's it. It is less than 40 rows, and you have a finished shawl. So but you know, it's on size 17 needles. So that's going. But yeah, that's the answer to that question. Let me put it back where it belongs. Oh no, I knocked over Riker. Man down. Man down. Okay, if you got any questions, put them in the chat, please. I hope everybody's still there. It hasn't moved for a little while, so. Holes for ventilation. That is an excellent choice, Karen. They're the ventilation holes. That's excellent. It's to let out the excess. It's just, and a lot of it, and a lot of my agenda is that I just adore knitting lace. It is possibly my favorite thing to knit. So I want to be able to knit all kinds of things with lace. And y'all who've been with me for a while, I like breaking rules. I don't like, I have a hard time doing things the way that people tell me to do it. I have a big what if in my, like a what if is always, but what if I do it this way? But what if I do it that way? But what if I change this? But I mean, why can't I knit yarn? Why can't I knit lace in a bulky yarn with a size 17 needle? I mean, I know when you think of lace, you think of lace weight yarn on a size 3 needle, but how about 17? Why can't we knit big old chunky stuff? And that's the same thing that happened. And even though it seems on the face that my two books don't really have anything to relate to each other, they're both the same in that way. I was told you can't knit color work and lace at the same time. You can't knit them in the same row. I mean, you can knit them in the same project, but they can't be like combined with each other. And I was like, why not? I want to do it. So that's my first book. And the second book is like, I want to do this. It's my stubborn streak, I guess. I don't follow instructions well. That's why I started writing patterns in the first place, because I don't follow instructions well, because I just get little wild hairs. Okay, my golfer has a question. Looking at all of those stitch dictionaries from all over the world, are there still new stitches to be discovered? So this ties into a rant that I did in last month's video, I think, about unventing. My answer to that would be, with all of the books in the world, all of the English books in the world, there are only so many words. Have all of the books already been discovered? I make up stitches all the time. Okay. Okay. This is my first book, the one on the cover. This stitch didn't exist until I made it up. You cannot find this stitch in any stitch dictionary. You cannot find, now, are there things in here that did come from stitch dictionaries? Yes, 100%. But of the pieces in this book, hang on. You can't find this stitch in any stitch dictionary. Yeah, this is a simple lozenge pattern, so yes, you can see that came out. You can't find this stitch, this stripy with horizontal and vertical motifs. You can't find that stitch. Here it is, big. You can't find that stitch in any stitch dictionary. The only place it exists is in this book. You can't find this stitch in any stitch dictionary. Again, this book. Those are okay. I wouldn't say that's particularly innovative. This stitch in isochronal arc, not in any stitch dictionary. A lot of these stitches are not found. This one is very much, you're never going to see this. Well, you're not going to see these stitches. See the pink? That is not in a stitch dictionary. This, not in a stitch dictionary. So I'm getting redundant at this point, but most of this book contains any of the mosaic lace in this book you cannot find in any Stitch dictionary. The only place you can find it is in this book or the single patterns, because I made them up. They didn't come from anywhere. Now, how I made them up is that some of them, so definitely some of them I found a lace stitch in a Stitch dictionary and replotted it out and modified it and incorporated the color work. And then other ways is I would start with a mosaic pattern that I found in a Stitch dictionary, and I would start figuring out how to incorporate lace into it. Always ended up having to modify the existing lace stitch or the existing mosaic pattern to work and integrate appropriately into each other the way I wanted to do it, which is why the development time on those stitches is very long. Like my shawl, one of the most complex mosaic lace piece I've published is Courant, and that is a combination of mosaic, slip stitch color work, and Estonian lace, and it literally took me 6 months to develop the stitch, to figure out how to get the two different Estonian stitches to work the way that I wanted them to work. So, and even when I do use a Stitch dictionary, I mean, sometimes I'll use the stitch straight out of the Stitch dictionary. Not very commonly. A lot of the times I will pull it out, but it will get modified in some way, shape, or form. And frequently it get modified to the point where it almost doesn't resemble what it started at. But a lot of times why I'm modifying it is because, okay, this came out of a Stitch dictionary, but to get the repeats to work the way and the increased pattern to work the way I want, it'd be better if it was 4 stitches wide instead of 3 stitches wide. So I'll modify it to be a wider motif so that it'll work better. So I very much believe. And then like Andrea Rangel, I reviewed her book. Where did I put it? Oh, this one just came out. This is a new Stitch dictionary. This was published in, I think it was published this year. No, 2023. And this is an entire Stitch dictionary of color work patterns that have never been published before. So, and this is her second color work Stitch dictionary. So and then you have, and anytime you think that it's all there, someone like Zandy Peters comes along and invents the stack stitch techniques. Or if you go even further back, the revolution in brioche. Brioche was originally like 2 stitches, and it has been taken to an extreme with Nancy Marchant and all the other people who have worked on it, and Leslie Robinson. All of this is to answer the question saying there are so many stitches and there's so many options. And even when we think we've gotten to the point where we've seen them all, somebody is going to invent a new type of needle that allows us to do things that we've never done before. Like when circular needles were invented. I mean, I don't know what the next thing is going to be, but the quantum leap of what could be done in knitting from only having access to straight needles or DPNs to these 60-inch long, these 60-inch long circular needles ended up with Cadbordy inventing Mobius cast-ons and actually knitting an actual Mobius strip, something that has only one surface and one edge. So I look forward to seeing what future creative fiber artists give us. So yeah. I want all the Stitch dictionaries, and I want the more Stitch dictionaries. And even if I have all the Stitch dictionaries, frequently I end up making up my own stitch anyway. Okay, that was a lot of ranty rant. Okay. Okay, so I hope that answered your question, my golfer. You didn't know you put a quarter into that particular, gave me the soapbox. You gave me the soapbox. It's your fault. Oh, I hope you try that lacy scarf. Giant elves. Karen, I'm so glad you like giant elves. It's a fun, I mean, I like that one too. I really love long rectangular shawls like that. That's one of my favorite shawl shapes because it's easiest for me to wear. Um, okay. Celeste says there's a mill outside of Bergen, Norway that has a pair of giant needles. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, Heidi loves my stubborn streak. How do you create a stitch? Heidi says, how do you create a stitch? Well, hmm. So we're talking about is a stitch, creating a stitch pattern, really. And this is one of those how knitting loves to make words like gauge, gauge, and gauge, and knit, knit, knitting, make words. When we're saying stitch, what we're really talking about is a stitch pattern or a motif that is a series of stitches arranged in a pleasing fashion, if you will, and they're very common. That's what all these stitch dictionaries are full of, because technically, I mean, there are many different stitches. You got knit purl, yarn over, various and sundry increases, various and sundry decreases. Then you get into dip stitches and wrap stitches. I mean, there are lots of different stitches, but what we're talking about is a stitch pattern, and it's various and sundry ways of combining those different stitches. So a cable pattern or a lace pattern or any number, and you can combine them however you want. So the way you create one is, well, I would do it in well, if I'm like mentally figuring it out, I'm doing it in my charting software. Like I'm going to lay it out and try to figure it out and stuff like that. A lot of times when I am brainstorming stitches, I'll do a swatch and I'll cast on with a little bit, and I'll start, as I said, with something out of a stitch dictionary. And as I'm knitting it, I think, oh, what would happen if I changed this from this kind of decrease to this kind of decrease? Or what would happen if I shifted this one to the left? And what I end up with is a swatch like this wide and like this long of me thinking and brainstorming through stitches. And that is how I develop stitches. How other people do, I don't know. And the really fun thing is sometimes what I'm doing is I've kind of finished my thought process on one, and then I start a whole nother thing. And sometimes stitches come from, like, I've stopped the one stitch and started another stitch, but I don't put any space in between them. And the way that those two completely disparate stitches interact with each other do something weird or fascinating. And then I pull that little bit out and isolate it and then see what happens, and then do it, you do it straight across, and then you do it alternating, or you do it staggered, or you leave a gap in between. It's just a mental process of, hang on, I think I might have one. But I have to see. Yeah, here's a baby one. Here's a baby one. And this is a stitch that I am working on developing that I need to get better. So if you look at the bottom, you can see, is it focusing? Hello. There we go. So if you look at the bottom, this is me thinking through the concept, and this one is 3 stitches wide. And then here, up here, is me thinking through the same concept, but this is the 5 stitch wide version. And you can see how, and I got to decide which one I like better, or maybe I can alternate them, or maybe I can do all kinds of stuff with them. But this is a stitch that I'm working on that I'm specifically trying to figure out if it works well in variegated yarns to play well, and it's possible that this will be the next second sock cowl. This is Malabrigo, I think. Oh no, the label is not in here. This is a bad thing for me. This might have just become scrap yarn, because if I can't, I'm pretty sure this is Malabrigo Anniversario, the Malabrigo, the new sock. But I don't have the label. But I'm pretty sure I bought this at a good yarn. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's Anniversario. So that's the concept, is working through ideas and seeing variants and whether they look better like in straight stacked motifs or like alternating motifs or leaving a space in between the motif. And the problem is I did that like months and months and months ago, and I've kind of forgotten what I did. So I'll probably end up making a whole nother swatch, thinking through it all over again, trying to figure out what I want to do. Oh, Velvet Plains, you like Swatch Lab. I'm so glad. I have another Swatch Lab I need to get done, but life has been distracting me. Oh, Velvet Plains. I am knowledgeable on knitting. Obviously, I'm very passionate. Do I have any other hobbies or activities that you like to share with others? Okay, and Celeste is saying, does the stitch look familiar? Have you seen the stitch before? I might have shown it to y'all before, but I'm pretty sure that it's doing something. It's doing something really weird. I'm doing something really. The reason why it's been just kind of it's definitely going to be one that like people are going to need to watch a video to do, because it has to do with lifted stitches, and what I'm doing with it is really strange. An online class, Les? No, actually I didn't, but did I? I don't think I did it in a fancy stitch club, but I might have. You know, I don't have the world's best memory. I don't think I did, but I think I actually think it evolved from one of the online classes, though. When I did those fancy stitch clubs and I was working with those stitches, I went off the deep end with so many different things. Well, so was it lifting? Okay, Celeste, was it lifting one of the floats out from underneath the other float? Because that's what's happening there. So what's happening there is you do the thing where you knit along and then you slip X number of stitches with the yarn in front, right? And then on the next row, it's just knit. And then the next row, you slip the same number of stitches with the yarn in front. So what you'll have is a face of stockinette with two strands running across it. And then you knit a little bit more, and then you actually go down, stick your needle underneath the bottom float, grab the top float, pull it out, up and underneath, put it on your needle and knit it together with, so it's manipulating those floats, but in a very strange way. And it's possible I did it in a class. I might have shown it in a class. I don't know. I do lots. I talk a lot. But I definitely did do a class that had the single floats, and we were doing the single floats, and that's what spawned this. Yes, that's a good point, Karen, as long as it creates fabric that doesn't fall apart. That is a good point. And we talked about the fabric that does fall apart when you knit with that giant roving. Okay, so Velvet Plans about other activities that you like to share with others. So I'm really into science fiction and fantasy. Well, not so much fantasy. I really enjoy reading science fiction. I currently am getting ready to next week go to a K-pop concert. I'm very excited. I got I knocked my glasses. My other glasses. I have another bag to show y'all. I told you I have a bag issue. I got this bag because the concert venue doesn't allow, you have to have a clear bag for the concert venue. That's the thing now. I'm fine with that. So this is my other new bag, and I had to get it so that I could make sure that it was big enough for me to put my light stick in, and it just fits. So I have my light stick and I'm ready to go to my concert. I'm very excited about that. I'm not going to dress up fancy. I'm too old to dress up fancy. And by fancy, I mean people dress up like costumey fancy, and I can't wait to see them all, but I will not be joining them. I have, for about 15 years in the past, I actually participated in medieval recreation. I belong to an organization called the Society for Creative Anachronism here in the United States, and I specialized in the medieval and Renaissance culinary arts. So that is a subject that I can talk about for way longer than most people would be interested in hearing, and people who have watched my YouTube lives have heard the offshoots of that, like the paleo archaeobotany and the gardening, because I really was really into the cooking, and part of understanding the cooking is understanding the available ingredients in the different regions. And so I really got into the gardening, and understanding how the gardening worked, and from that into like more archaeological evidence for what was and wasn't available and used together in foodstuffs, like they've found the yeast in Egyptian pyramids that they've made beer from and all kinds of stuff. So like I'm really into food, so medieval historical food, but also more modern food stuff. So that's something I'm really into. I'm and really, I think I'm too picky of an eater to be a real foodie, because I don't eat like I don't eat exotic things, that I think, but I am a fairly adventurous eater. Part of my trip, I actually recently went on a trip through Southeast Asia, and I went to Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Australia. And the food was a huge part of that, and the cultures and everything. So yeah, I can talk about all kinds of stuff. I can talk about all kinds of stuff. I do not stop talking. And they've got me talking on Star Trek and Star Wars and any number of things. Marvel. I'm not really into the Marvel universe, but I was a big comic book reader in the 80s. And so there's all of that, and just all kinds of stuff. Oh, Valid Plans. I am going to see ATEEZ. I'm super excited. And ATEEZ is an interesting group because in K-pop you have like the big 4 or 5 companies that really have the juggernauts behind different, like JYP and S&M, SM, and the company that's BTS and all of that. ATEEZ is actually part of a very small company called KQ that only has 2 groups, and for the longest time they only had 1 group, and it's ATEEZ. So they're really considered like a very small, they're like not considered like one of the big bands, but they're so amazing that they were the first male K-pop band to perform at Coachella this year. So that was a huge deal. I really am only into 2 K-pop groups. I can appreciate some of the other ones, but there are 2 that I just really like their music. And when I say into, I mean I like their music. I'm not, I mean, I do, I mean, I have my other light stick and I have some albums, but I'm not gonna have like the giant like 3-ring binder full of photo cards and stuff. I mean, I'm not saying I don't have photo cards, because I do have photo cards. Here are my boys that I'm getting ready to go see. They this one in the front is Woo Young. Woo Young, he's funny. This came with the light stick. I do have cards, and I do have little stuffed animals, but I'm not a rabid K-pop fan. I'm just enthusiastic. Okay. Oh, that's a fun question. Medieval cooking. How do you get started with that? I bet you can't use a Teflon pan. So, when I say medieval cooking, I am not cooking in a medieval fashion, because that is a whole different ball of wax. It is, what I did was research and um, translate into modern recipe, like a modern recipe format, and try to remain as authentic and loyal to the original receipt, which is recipe. But I was using a modern kitchen. I trying to cook it in honestly trying to cook it in a medieval fashion just required way more money, because I mean you'd have to be building stuff and everything. I mean, I tried to not use But yes, I did use nonstick pans. But I used a lot of cast iron pans. And realistically, you can't it's very difficult to get actual medieval ingredients because even like I would go to the effort of identifying tracking down and identifying a apple varietal that was available in the time period that I was cooking. But even if you can track down, and you can, I was able to locate some, but the fact is, the apple I'm buying was grown in the United States as opposed to being grown in, Germany. And terroir is a thing. So the ground that it grows in is going to have effect on how it tastes. Apples, though, are super interesting in that apples do not reproduce. Getting into my nerd, you put the quarter in. Apples don't reproduce from seed. Any apple you see, when you open it up, it typically will have 5 seeds in it. Each of those 5 seeds are genetically different from each other and genetically different from the tree it came from. So you could plant those 5 seeds and get 5 wildly different trees, most of which are not going to have an edible apple that comes from it. That is just the way that apple genetics work. So the apple that I'm specifically thinking of is the lady apple, and there's documentation. You can document the lady apple into pre-16th century because there is actually documentation, and I can't remember who it was because I don't have my research. There was a French princess or lady or whatever who married into a high, very high ranking British family. And in the list on a letter, like of her writing back to France saying, they don't have the food I want, please send me these things. She asked to be sent grafts of lady apple, and all apples are, if they're genetically the same, are grafted from the original tree. So like every single red delicious apple is a genetic clone of the original red delicious apple tree, and there was only ever one of those trees. So genetically the lady apple is identical to the lady apple that was grown in France prior to this in the 16th century. So that's like as close as you can get to like thorough, like, but the dirt it being grown in Georgia versus the dirt it's being grown in medieval France. And even once they moved it from France to England, it's going to taste slightly different, and that's why we get into all of the laws about, champagne is only champagne if it's grown in the Champagne region of France, because that's where the dirt is. So that's a really fascinating. The whole apple thing is really fascinating to me. There's a really great book, and it's a modern book. It's by an author named Michael Pollan, and it's called The Botany of Desire. And it is a fantastic book if you're interested in that kind of thing. And what it is the concept is the human as the bee. So how specific types of plants have actually either evolved or used humans to evolve into spreading their genetics across the world. And the chapters are apple, rose, tulip, and cannabis, marijuana. And they're really, it's really, it's got the whole chapter on tulip is all about they really get into the tulip thing about how the crash, and it completely crashed their financial. Apple, they're talking about Johnny Appleseed and how he was planting cider orchards because since he was planting seeds, these were not edible apples. These were only going to be cider apples because the odds of any of them being an actual apple that can be eaten from a planted seed is very, very, I don't know. Oh my goodness. You pushed a button. Oh my goodness. Sorry. Cooking nerd info. I'm such a cooking nerd. I am so. Yes, apple genetics. This is definitely a knitting subject. If you get on a quiz show, yeah, call me, man. But not if it's anything sports related. That's the thing. People are like, you must be great at trivia. I'm like, only if it's the nerdiest trivia that ever nerded. Because if you ask me anything about like current events or sports or geography, no. I have very niche interests. We almost don't have to talk needles anymore. We can always talk about needles. I did mention circular needles, though. Yes, I'm the phone a friend, man. Janice says, kind of like sourdough bread taking on the flavor of the local flora fauna. Exactly. And there are some super fascinating things, especially in Paris, where there are breads that there are bakeries that are baking bread using a starter that has been continuously refreshed for centuries, like centuries. And those are really interesting. I actually started making my own yogurt and found there's a website that sells heirloom yogurt cultures, and these are all thermophilic, so you have to heat them. This isn't just, put some lemon juice in it. And you can go to the website and they have specific ones, and it'll be like they have an Indian one and they have a Japanese one and it's really interesting to taste all. And so you get that starter and you can make it and interesting to taste the different yogurts, that different cultures and what they are selecting for and how they evolve. And so it's like French, Indian, Japanese, and multiple of different, it's really cool. Um, Karen's like, best button ever. You know, I don't know. I don't know if I could make this my YouTube channel because so much of it is from so long ago that it's just things I remember. And unfortunately, on the internet, people will challenge you and they want proof. They want to see your references. And I mean, I think I have the hard drive that all of this research is on, but it is not on my current computer. Like, okay, so when I cooked medieval food, um, the organization I was with, we did feasts at like state parks, and I would cook from anywhere between 120 to like 200 people. It was a big feast. I would have a crew. I would do all the purchasing. I would do all the planning. I would do all the budgeting, and I would do all the recipes, and we would present these things. And I was trying my best to do it so it looked to try to create verisimilitude, to get as close as possible to these people, because these people would all be dressed in medieval clothing and everything, and trying to get it there. And I got obsessed with, and this is just going to sound completely nuts, okay? I got obsessed with whether or not medieval and Renaissance people would garnish their dishes. Was garnish a thing? And I spent a fairly ridiculous amount of time going through all of the books that were translated manuscripts of period culinary manuscripts. And I'm talking probably several dozen books, reading through each recipe and seeing if there was any reference to something that seemed to be a garnish. And I made huge spreadsheets about it, and I wrote this big paper about it, and I taught classes on it, and it was all about garnishing. And I mean, the document is like 20 some odd pages long. And I just kind of got like, to the extent that I went to a museum to look at examples of period plateware to understand how the plates would interact with the instructions on how to put the food on. I had a problem. And again, all that documentation is on a disk somewhere, because it's not particularly useful in my current life. You totally believe everything I said. I believe everything. Oh, you can totally make your own yogurt. Oh, making yogurt, if you have an Instant Pot, or really if you just have a pot, you can make it it's just a matter of heating up the yogurt past a certain, and then bringing it back down and adding the starter culture. And and then letting the microbes do their microbially things, and you got yogurt. And then what you do is, if you really like that yogurt, you save one of those yogurts and you use it to start your next yogurt. I mean, at the easiest level, you can literally just do it by going to the grocery store and getting a thing of yogurt and following the instructions to dump it into, and you can start it with yogurt that you get from the store. It is really not hard to make your own yogurt. I mean, it's time consuming, but not difficult. It's like knitting, time consuming, not difficult. Hello, Judith. I need a server, not a computer. Do not let my child hear that. I will end up with one. There are some things you just need to know. Karen, there are some things you just need to know. So I have always, I'm a font of useless knowledge. I know some of the most bizarro things. And it's just been something, I retain information in weird ways, like something important, no. Something bizarre, yes. And one time I was at my mom's house, this was many years ago, and we were playing a game on the back porch. I think it was Scrabble. And it was me and my brother and my mom, and I think my boyfriend at the time, whatever. We were just playing, right? And she lived on a lake, and she had like a pond, a water feature. And we're sitting there, right? We're sitting there and we're playing this game on the back porch. It was lovely. And all of a sudden, this bullfrog, you hear this loud frog, right? And it starts doing its bullfroggy stuff. And my mom is like, oh, that's the first time I've heard it this year. It was the spring. She goes, I wonder if that's the same bullfrog as last year. And she turned and she looked at me and she goes, Barbie, what's the average lifespan of a bullfrog? And I was like, what? Like, she said it like she was like 100% confident that I was going to have an answer to that question. And I was like, seriously? Seriously? And I was like, and we all laughed and everything. And then I was driving home. Well, he was my husband or my boyfriend. He was, I don't know what status he was then. And we're driving home. And I call my mom when I'm about halfway home. I'm like, Mom, it's about 7 years. Just FYI, I had to look it up because I couldn't stand not knowing. I couldn't stand not knowing the average lifespan of an American bullfrog. Because she asked me. So that's what my brain does. It's really terrifying. It is one of these things that you need to know. I haven't seen Slumdog Millionaire. Should I watch it, Sarah Jo? I don't always win at trivia, Stitch Itch, because I can't tell you. We were at a Mexican place and they were playing trivia and things were going fairly well. And I actually even helped the table. I wasn't playing, but I was helping the table next to me because they asked what is the culinary term for the thymus gland. And I'm like, that's a sweetbread. Doesn't everybody know it's a sweetbread? And everybody was looking around like they had no idea. So I leaned over to the person. I was like, it's sweetbread. And they were like, really? I'm like, I'm telling you. And I'm like, I know it's a sweetbread. But they also asked, like, who were the one of the big questions, like the middle question that was worth like extra points, like the gimmies. And it was like, name the top 3 2023 quarterbacks who did some fancy football-y thing. And I'm like, if the question was name 3 quarterbacks, I still would get it wrong. I can't do any of that kind of stuff. I just can't. Oh, okay. So yeah, I maybe am Slumdog Millionaire. I have lots of random information. Okay, so I'm going to talk about something knitting related. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, see, I'm glad I'm looking at the chat over here because the chat on my phone has like given up. It's stuck back on giant elves. So I've gotten a couple questions, one in Facebook and one on a YouTube about after my gauge, about doing gauge swatches. And I'm probably going to do a video on this. But one of the questions, and because I briefly mentioned it, was about measuring gauge in pattern. Because sometimes that is what it'll say that it's in, that the gauge that you're given is in the pattern. It's in a cable pattern, it's in a lace pattern and everything. And the easiest way to measure a gauge in either a cable pattern or a lace pattern is what you have to do is look at your repeat and know what your repeat is of the motif. And by the motif, I mean like the repeated diamond lace pattern or the repeated, it's like, okay, the cable repeat is purl 2 and then this cable and then purl 2 and then Y cable, right? That's, and then like purled on either side. So there's 2. So so if it's purl 1, 2/2 cable, purl 2, 2/2 cable, purl 1, what you would do is look at that and know that that motif is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you know that that motif is 12 stitches wide, right? Once you have knit your swatch and blocked your swatch, you measure the motifs, okay? You know that the motif is 12 stitches wide. So instead of trying to measure 4 inches, just measure X number of motifs, right? And that will tell you, so you know, let's say we measure 3 motifs. So 12 times 3 is 36, okay? And then you measure those 3 motifs that you know are 36 stitches wide, and they come out to be 3 inches. Then you divide, oh, now I'm going to have to pull up the actual calculator. So you know that you have 36, so 36 stitches divided by 3 inches is 12 stitches. Okay, and these are just numbers. So you know you're getting 12 stitches per inch. Okay? I, made up the numbers so it worked super easy. You do the same thing with lace. You determine the width of your motif, measure the number of motifs, you know the number of stitches in those motifs divided by the number of inches. And that's how you get your stitches per inch for your pattern. So it's measuring, instead of trying to count individual stitches, it's just knowing the width of your motif and measuring motifs. Okay? I am now going to check the chat and see if that made any sense to anyone. Okay. Thank you, Judith. That's so sweet. A 3-month-long trivia game. That seems excessive. Okay, so just Sarah Jo said it made sense. Okay, so you think that that'd be worth like a whole video, like actually demonstrating how to do it? Because I think that there are people who have questions about that kind of, especially cables and lace are a challenge. The other thing that's really challenging is garter. It's hard to count garter. And when I count garter, if my gauge is in garter, specifically counting the rows, what you do is you count the purl rows, and you know that each purl row represents 2 rows of knitting. So that's, so I'm just going to say real quick, if you haven't pushed the thumbs up button, if you're enjoying the stream, I'd appreciate it. It just lets YouTube know that I'm not in here talking to myself, but they also know because you're chatting, and I really appreciate all the chats as well. Yes, more gauge. I love gauge. Most of the time people are like, no, gauge is evil. Might as well be a 4-letter word. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. We need the measuring. That was not grammatically, what I wrote down was not even remotely grammatically correct, but I am very confident that I will be able to figure out what I was telling to myself, and I'm the only one who needs to read it. I said measuring gauge in motif. That's not in the right order. Those words, I did not put them in the right order. Yes, yes, Celeste. Thank you for saying. And some people do understand things just by having it described, but some people really, really are visual learners. So when I can, I try to demo things so they can see them. But I will have videos where um, people get fussy in the comments that I didn't provide a visual. And a lot of times what that comes down to is I'm explaining something that has a level of complexity that where I try to do a visual for it, I would have to make 15, 16, 17 swatches. I would have to put so much time and effort into creating the different stages, because the way you do it when you're making a video is you'll frequently have to make the stage in several different swatches so that you're not watching me knit back and forth forever and ever and ever. And that just takes so much prep work. And it's really, I can't justify all that extra time. As much as I love helping and I love the community and the dynamic, if I have to spend like a week of my knitting time creating swatches for a video that is literally going to be given away for free, I cannot justify it in my business. It's just, I have an allotted amount of time in my like financial budget to create free stuff. And I can't really just go completely bonkers with free stuff to the detriment of the work that I need to be getting done. So it's a juggling act, because yes, would it be awesome if none of us had to make any money and we could all just do whatever we want to do? That'd be fantastic. But that is not the world we live in. So I have to balance that. Okay. Any recommendations for joining yarn that is 100% linen? Is it applied yarn? Because we did talk about joining yarn, I think last. So when I join yarn, I leave very long ends. And if I was doing linen, I would leave a very long end, and simply when I get to the point where the yarn needs to switch, I will switch. I'll leave a big end on the old ball and bring in the new ball and leave a big end on the new ball. And then I just go in and I weave in those long ends. If it is a plied yarn, a specifically linen or a slippery yarn, what will often need to happen is taking those and unplying them, like separating them out into two separate strands and weaving in those strands. So I would end up weaving in 4 strands, because it'd be 2 from each end, and weaving them in one way and then weaving in another way, and really weaving it in a lot. I don't splice. I don't do any of that kind of stuff because I don't trust knots. And knots tend to show. But yeah, I weave, but linen, you can split the plies. If it's applied linen, you can split the plies and weave them in separately, and that should help. And it makes it thinner, so it shouldn't be as visible. I don't know if that helped my golfer. Have I ever talked about size inclusivity? I just can't go through my Instagram feed without seeing so much aggressive discussion about it. What do you expect from new designers? So, I do not design anything that needs to be really sized. I am an accessory designer. So and really that is my way of being size inclusive. A shawl doesn't fit. Anybody can wear a shawl. If I do, I do mostly one size kind. I mean, I do hats, and they will be in several different sizes. But again, there's not a huge range of hat sizes. I do fingerless mitts. I do cowls. I do things that don't fit. So size really isn't an issue. When I do my fave fives, if I am selecting garments, I try my very best to select garments that have a good range of size inclusivity with them, because I am a big woman. And I think it's great. I don't knit garments, but I know a lot of people out there do. So that is what I I try to recommend and hold up designers, promote designers that do have that size inclusivity. I personally don't expect anything of new designers. I mean, I don't like have set like I think they should do that. You need to do what new designers needs to do whatever they feel is appropriate for the brand that they are trying to create. And what I would say about new designers is they need to be very cognizant of with the first pattern you publish, you are creating a brand. You are, and I think I've said this before, it's the whole dress when you're going on a job interview, dress for the job you want, not necessarily the one you're interviewing for, which, wear a suit. Wear nice, even if you're interviewing for something that's going to be casual clothing, wear something nicer because you eventually want to be the manager. If that's your agenda, if it's not, whatever. So if you want to be a size inclusive designer, then you should be a size inclusive designer from the drop. It is the thing. Right now, industry standard is shifting to a wider range. If you are going to be sending in proposals to any third-party publishers, most of them are going to request a larger range, both from, an extra small up into like 4 to 5XL. It's just part of the game, if you will. If you are not confident in your ability, if one is not confident in their ability to do the grading, there are people you can pay to, just like you need to pay a tech editor, there are people you can pay to grade your pieces. Like if you design it in one size, but it's not as easy as just plugging in some numbers. And in the size inclusive discussion, there's a lot of implication that it's just as easy. There are people who are like, I've created this calculator and you just need to put in the numbers and it'll calculate it out for you. And really that's disingenuous because it doesn't work that way. Because it's not a straight line, because like necklines don't increase in a straight line because necklines only need to get so wide, and arm skies only increase at a certain rate. At some point, that's just too big. But even with that, we were talking about cables. When you're scaling a garment that has cables, if you have a garment that has, X number of cables on the front, simply, and especially if it's in repeated motifs, simply adding another motif is at some point going to fail, because what looks proportional on someone with a 28-inch bust are going to look like tiny, ridiculous cables on someone with a 52-inch bust. So really good designers, you're going to look at they will actually change the size of the cables. What on the 28-inch bust is a 2/2 cable, once you get up to a 52-inch bust, you're looking at a 4/4 cable to maintain the proportions and aesthetics of the design. So it's not just as simple as plug in some numbers. So those are all things you have to think about what kind of one needs to think about what kind of designer you want to be. Is it required? No, there are no rules. There are no designers that are gonna hunt you down. I don't have to, when I design something, I don't have to send it off to some designer council that decides, yes, this is good or not. It is literally the only thing being affected is the designer's reputation. And one just has to decide what they want their reputation to be, I guess, is what I would say. Yes, I would like Sarah Jo wants to live in my world. Wants to live in my world where we can just do whatever the heck we want. Oh, Karen, excellent. So, LPGA, Karen represented someone with a very detailed video on weaving and enjoying types of linen fibers. That is fantastic. So you might want to check Mel Makes Stuff. That is very cool. Victoria Henry, I have, again, because I don't grade things and I don't design things that have to be fitted. There's a size inclusive collective with a huge resource for testers, designers, knitters, sewers, etc., to help find tech editors, graders. That is very cool, Victoria. Thank you very much for sharing that resource. Okay, so I said that about the first design, but if you go back and my first two designs, it's one of those learn from my mistakes kind of situations. The first two patterns I put on Ravelry, well, and they're really not, they're not on my website. The first two patterns I put on Ravelry, we're talking about in 2011. They were free patterns that I just kind of did. At no point in time did it ever occur to me that I would be designing knitwear. But when I designed my first shawl and I was like, okay, I'm going to put this out and make people pay for it. I designed the shawl, I wrote the shawl, I photographed the shawl. Then I paid a graphic designer to design my layout in design for my, and I put a lot of time and effort into figuring out what I wanted my pattern format to look like. And I'm like, what is my brand? What does this need to look like? And one of the things that I decided on that very first pattern is something that to this day people remark on in my patterns. And I remember the discussion with my graphic designer, very, very detailed discussion. I'm like, I want to have, so I had a hard time following patterns that were the full width of an 8.5 by 11, where the rows go, oh no. But I also had a difficult time following two columns because it made them too short and my eye would skip. So if you look at one of my patterns, well, this is what it looks like. I created this situation, and this is what I want. So we have where the pattern occupies is 2/3, and then I have a 1/3, and this is what I call the sidebar, right? So I have this blank space. The reason why that blank space exists is multi reasons. One is to make the pattern space narrower so that it's not too wide or not too narrow. It's a width that I didn't lose track. But also, whenever I was knitting other patterns, I was constantly writing on them and making notes to myself, and you had to squeeze them in between places. This sidebar is there for me to take notes, for me to write notes. But then I also realized one of the things that drove me nuts in a pattern is when there are things going on in the pattern and all the notes are at the top of the pattern. And it allowed me to put notes in the sidebar directly across from where that information was relevant so that it was in line at the same time. And then once I figured out that I had this sidebar and I was thinking about how I used patterns, I was like, I want Scantron bubbles. Because what I would always do is if something said repeat 8 times, I would write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then check them off as I went. So I integrated whenever that kind of instruction is in one of my patterns, there are these little bubbles with the numbers in it that you can check off. Because that is how I used. So everything about my personal pattern style is how I use patterns. Now, it might not, jive with everyone's pattern usage. So not everybody's going to love my style, but people who do find that they like my style can be assured that this has not, there's been minor changes. Like I changed the front page. This is how, if you go by my oldest pattern, it's going to look really, really similar to this. There have been changes. I used to have a decorative motif that was shadowed behind here, but I removed it when someone gave me the feedback that they were a visually impaired knitter and it caused their reader. They used a thing that read the PDF to them so they could knit, and that extra stuff caused it to do weird things. So I removed that. Also, that same person told me that the italics, that it couldn't read the italics. So I removed there, you'll see no italics in because visually impaired, their readers, their automatic readers can't read the italics. So that's another thing I removed. And I don't know if the sidebar is particularly helpful for the people with visual impairment. I don't know how it does, but you can see this is an old thing. So this is still in italics, but I've changed that. But I still get every once in a while someone talking about exactly how much they appreciate the little check bubbles. So it's an additional helping kind of thing that I use. So thinking about, but I did that from my first for pay pattern. And it's just, and again, it is changed and evolved over time as I've gotten better, hopefully, at writing patterns and things have changed. But like include I don't include any images. The only images are on the front page because there are people who don't like it'll mess up the having a lot of pictures in the body will suck dry their ink when they're printing it. So they can choose to not print that first page, or they're only printing the one page with a lot of images on it. Again, there's really reasons for all of it. I didn't used to, but now it's only been the last few years. Someone said, I really wish you'd make sure. So now all of my patterns will have the name of the pattern right here. And I didn't used to do that, but somebody gave me feedback and said they wanted that. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't hurt me. I can fix that. So it's just it's an evolution. Uh, do, 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 do. Okay, LPGA. Do tech editors calculate the grading manually or do they use software? You would have to ask a tech editor, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say manually. I don't know of any official software that will. I mean, they might use Excel or something like that, but there's no real software that does it like for you. It doesn't exist. Um, and that's the thing. Some tech editors, so um, Karen has said, Stitch Itch says plus sizes are different in some countries. I 100% believe that. I thought grader and tech editor were different jobs. It can be, or you can find a tech editor. Each tech editor is different in what they offer. I have met tech editors who will create your graphs and create illustrations. It depends on what services the tech editor offers. Every tech editor has their own. I know tech editors who do crochet only. I know tech editors that do knitting only. I know them that do both. I know there are tech editors that are more ghost writers where you literally just send them your notes and they essentially write the pattern. And again, all of these are different level of things that are going to cost you different amounts of money. Some tech editors can do the grading. Some tech editors can only there's a difference between checking the grading and doing the grading for you. So most tech editors are going to go in and make sure that the grading you have done is consistent. But there are tech editors that you can send them just the information for the one size you knit and they do the grading for you. That's a whole different thing, and that costs much more because that's a lot of time and effort. That's a lot of work. That's a good thing. I think most people use spreadsheets for automatic calculation, but still have to manually shape for design, etc. Yeah, I mean, because everything's different, and designers are constantly coming up with different things. Karen, you love the bubbles and you're going to add them to every pattern. It is. I love it. It's kind of fun to check them off. It's like, yay, I finished that one. I thank you for saying, Sarah Jo, that I'm a thoughtful person. I don't know if it's thoughtful or that I'm a control freak. But I get hyper focused on things, and I try to think through. Here, ooh, you want to talk about hyper focus? You want to talk about hyper focus? Velvet, I'm getting the feeling that you're looking at becoming a designer. Okay. And I just want to, and anyone else who may be thinking about a pattern, okay? One of the things you have to consider is your font and the readability of your font. And this has so many, okay, so. Yes, Velvet. I have had my husband model for me before. He has been in almost any of my men's patterns that are my indie patterns. The gentleman in it is, I think they are all my husband, starting with No Mr. Bond, I Expect You to Die, up to, I mean, he's been it. He models my men's patterns, or my masculine patterns, the ones that I consider to be gender free patterns. But I always model the more masculine leaning patterns on my husband, um, so that um, it's easier for people to visualize. Because I have found that most knitters have no problem looking at something on a man and visualizing what it would look like on a woman. But when it's on a woman, they have difficulty visualizing it in a masculine space. So, like my most recent pattern, the Rev It Up, um, I modeled on my husband. But fonts, I have lots and lots and lots of opinion on fonts. In this oversharing thing where we talked about medieval, my degree, I have a degree, bachelor's of science in it's called graphic communications is the official name of it, but it is essentially printing and printing technologies. I went to school to learn about printing. It was in the mid 90s. So like when I started using Photoshop, I started using Photoshop there when I started. I don't know what version it was, but they were literally only 8 tools, and I used it on a black and white monitor. So when I was checking color, I was using the little eyedropper to check the CMY K balance of things and to understand if it was going to come out the right color. And I was doing color correction on black and white monitors. So this is like I walked uphill both ways in the snow kind of computer action. But I have many opinions on fonts and typesetting and all those sorts of things. But this was supposed to be a tip. So when you are picking your font that you are going to use for your patterns, if you choose to use a sans serif font, that's fine. I'm about them. Make sure that in your font, can you see this? Make sure that your one has a little serif. Make sure the one has a little hat on it, okay? Because if the one in your font is just a straight line, the abbreviation slip 1 is SLL. Technically, it's SL1, but if your L looks exactly like your 1, then people are going to be writing you emails saying, what's KL instead of knit 1? If it's knit 1, it's going to look like KL, and they're going to be like, what's KL? I don't know what that abbreviation is. Make sure your 1 has a serif on it. If you have to put it in to your font, make sure your 1 has a serif so that you can tell the difference between the L and the 1. Make sure your I has a dot. The lowercase I has to have a dot, because if it's just a little line, people are going to get confused. The uppercase I has to have the hat and the foot, because people are going to get confused, because L and I and 1 look the same in some sans serif fonts. So that, you guys got a really esoteric rant there. You should, well, write it as you go. Write it as you go, Sarah Jo. If you want to write it down, don't like try to backtrack it. That's never fun. Flip back to normal view. I don't know. I haven't touched anything. I don't know what's going on with my phone. Velvet, I don't know if I'm a guru, but yeah, the stupid 1. It is actually, you don't think about it until you get nasty emails. And that is what happens, because you just, the 1 looks like an L, and it's a problem when people, it is a problem specifically in knitting, because in just wordy words, nobody's going to accidentally think that in a string of number, it's because we have all these weird abbreviations, and it can cause lots of problems. Oh, you finally you didn't know what a serif was? So the difference between a serif and a sans serif font is okay, so this is technically a sans serif font. A sans serif font is something like Arial. It's where there are no little feet or hats on the ends of your letters. A serifed font is going to be something like Times New Roman, where you have like little feet and they have those little booklets that flip out from it. They can be all kinds of different shapes and everything, but you got serifed and sans serif fonts. Now, serifed fonts are specifically created to make it easier on the eyes to read large blocks of text. But sans serif fonts read better on computer screens, and it's just what people have come to find. So sans serif fonts have really tended to become very dominant. Aesthetically, I don't particularly care for sans serif fonts because I'm very much a serif person, but you got to roll with the punches and go with the flow. Personally, my favorite font is Garamond. It is an ancient font. I mean, it's like from like the 15th century. It is a beautiful font. It's beautifully balanced. I just love it. Love it to bits. A lot of more modern fonts don't have the aesthetics that contribute to readability and just prettiness. But there are all kinds of fun fonts out there, but making sure that you have one that is legible as a knitting font is really important if you are writing a pattern. Okay. Heidi Cook, you may have explained, but what is K-pop? K-pop is Korean pop music. That's all it is. K-pop is Korean pop music. There's K-pop and there's J-pop, which is Japanese pop music. It is what the K-pop industry is actually one of the largest industries in South Korea. And it's just this machine of churning out K-pop music. So that is K-pop. It just means it's a type. It's like saying, no, it's not, because it's not a specific style of music. Because there's so many there are K-pop artists across all genres. It is simply the Korean music industry, K-pop being a specific subgenre of it, where they create groups that perform together, where the music and the performance are integrated into each other in a way that they are inseparable. In their performances, you've got the music, but you also have the dancing and the choreography and everything, and it all goes together. It's really cool. But only, I mean, I only really like two groups, maybe three. Congratulations, Sarah Joe! You formatted your master's thesis and turned it in. You go. You deserve new yarn. That is amazing. That is incredibly amazing. I mentioned a needle, the circular needles, and how, yeah, I did. There's definitely a little bit of needles. Does anybody have any knitting needle questions? I really feel like we've covered knitting needles. We have beaten that particular subject into the ground like a tent peg. But hopefully somebody will invent something new that we can talk about. I didn't know there were great Korean golfers, but that is awesome to know. See, everybody has their own genre. You deserve new yarn. Go get it. You have my permission. Copper needles. Where did you get copper needles, Elizabeth? I have never seen copper needles. I have one pair of the kind of brass ones that Addie from back in the day. It was the very first circular needle I ever bought. I wonder if it's visible. Hang on, I'll be right back. I think it's a 7. Yep, there it is. This is the very first circular needle I ever bought. It's a size 7. It is an Addie, and they have this, I don't know, they smell. I don't know what they're made out of, but they are copper colored. Likey has copper ones. I'll have to look into those. Now, the super funny thing about this needle is I'm going to have to look into that. I'm going to, Okay, I just typed it into my Google. I'll leave it up. So one of the problems with these needles, even though they're like my oldest pair of needles, look here. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that. See that little kink in it? Right there. That kink is permanent. And the reason that kink is in this needle is because I was doing magic loop and I had both my hands full and it was full, but my loop was like going in like it was going to disappear. And I grabbed it with my teeth and pulled it and I bit it and it kinked and like put a kink into it because I meant to like get it in between my teeth, but I actually bit it with my canine, one of my pokey teeth. And I actually, so don't bite your needles. Don't do that. Oh, that was super sweet of your husband, Elizabeth. So it's always good when they get you something you don't need, but you do want. Karen Albee said, need to look up art or sculpture made out of the straight needles we all have rattling around in your homes. So I did know someone, it was an old Etsy store, but I believe that's shut down, that would take the old aluminum straights and she made them into jewelry. She would cut the tips and the ends, you know, the end that had the number on it and the tips, and she would mount them, and she made earrings and she would make pendants out of them. And that was really cool. So you could do that with straight wooden needles as well. So that, but the aluminum ones can be like carefully bent to an extent. So she did some really interesting things with that. Oh, they're blunt tips. I'm not a blunt tip fan. I think I have the ergonomic knitting book. That doesn't mean I've read it, but I acquired it with intent. No, I have, what do I have? I have this one. I do. I have it. This is the book that Velvet Plans referenced. I have purchased it. That's as far as I'll go. I think it was on sale. Or maybe I pulled full price. It doesn't look like it has a for sale sticker on it, but I bought it. I cannot knit loosely. It's just not my thing. I just found another swatch where I was noodling on something. Back to the how do you develop a stitch? This was me thinking about something. The fun thing is I honestly don't remember what I was thinking. Oh, yeah, I know what I was doing here. So this is kind of cool. So what I was doing here is knit 3 together, yarn over, knit 3 together all in one spot, and it creates these little rabbit ear things. Who knows? Who knows what I was doing? I occupy myself. It is a big book. It is a big book. New enamel pin, don't bite your needles. It was a mistake I made on my first needle. See, the thing is, I like these needles and I still knit with them occasionally, but yeah, my hand smells like pennies. So these might be made out of copper because as soon as I touch them, my hands smell like pennies. And that kind of, it doesn't get sticky the way the nickel ones do, but it does bug me a bit. Okay, knitting without looking is never going to be in my thing. I vampired the knitting needles. I did. I bit them. I shouldn't have done it. You know, you do things when you're desperate. One time I was working, actually I was working on one of the pieces in big lace, big yarn, beautiful lace, and I had was chaperoning my son to the Lion King musical. And instead of going in and watching the musical, I sat in the lobby on the ground and was knitting because I was up against a deadline. And I got to the point in the pattern where I needed to transfer like 20 something, 28 stitches to waste yarn, and I'd forgotten to bring waste yarn because I didn't think I would get that far. And I desperately searched through my bag, and I ended up transferring my stitches to the phone charger that I had in my bag. I had a phone charger, and so I transferred my stitches to my phone charger, and and that's how I held them. And then I was like, guess I won't be charging my phone anytime soon, or at least not until I get to the point where I need to pick these stitches back up. I think I took it home and put it on the needles. I'll put it on some yarn. But hey, you can always do different things. Improvise, adapt, and overcome. Exactly. Any advice for sweaty Betties like us with wet hands constantly? Ruth, that is a question I have never gotten before. And I honestly don't know. I don't know. There are some, I don't know if it would help, but the only thing I can think of is there are some solid lotion bars that are intended to keep your hands smooth, but the ones that are specifically marketed to knitters are mostly beeswax based. And I'm thinking that if you use one of those solid beeswax bars and rubbed your hands on it, that might help a little bit. Because I would think that the wax might, because the way that these bars are designed is they're solid, and when you rub them with your hands, the heat of your hands activates it, and then it sinks completely in, but there's no residue. The beeswax might help. I mean, I feel like adding lotion to a sweaty situation might be counterintuitive, but I'm just thinking that the beeswax might seal a little bit. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. I don't have any experience with that. I'm sorry. Everything is a knitting notion. Yes, everything is a knitting notion. Okay, so we have been here for a while. Thank you all so much for joining me. I so appreciate these talks that we get. I really love the community and that I recognize so many of the names all the time, and we always get new friends who join us. I hope any of our new friends will come back next month when we do it in August. And if you aren't in the Facebook group, the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, please consider joining us so we can continue any conversations and continue to chat. We can always ramp that up if we want to. I really just, it's so much fun to do these things. And I did manage to talk about knitting. I did. We had some serious, I blame a lot of the sidetracking onto Karen. Karen, it's your fault. Is you, because I am very easy to derail, because there are actually a lot of subjects that I have gotten very into and can talk extensively about just because. Oh, Arnetta, I didn't see you come in. Welcome. I'm so glad you were here with us. Thank you, Karen. I don't know if it's that, but yeah. I'm excited. I will probably not be able to stop talking about my ATEEZ concert in the end of August because I'm super excited about that. Oh, I have an appointment to get my tattoo touched up a bit. We're going to get a little bit more. So, hang on. I'm vertical, so it's hard to do this. So I really feel like this part, it kind of is detached. So I think I'm going to get more filled in here. And I really like this little splat, and I think we might get some splat. We're just going to get some touch up this because it hasn't been touched up since it was originally done, but it's fully healed now, and I think I'm going to get a little bit more work done on it. There's a couple of spots in the yarn ball that didn't heal quite right, so a little bit of the black needs to be, and like on my wrist, There's a couple spots where the green overpowers the black. So I will probably have new tattoo to show y'all. Um, and you do not repent. Yeah, that's a whole lot of sorry, no, sorry, not sorry, right, Karen? Okay, I got to figure out how to turn this off because it's like not my normal setup. Um, okay, again, thank you all so much for coming. Hopefully, I will have the normal setup next week. Make sure if you think of any questions that you want to talk about during the live, I usually put up the placeholder the Monday before, but we'll have other fun things to do. So, where is the button? No, that's share. Huh. I think I'm just going to push the X button. I think is what we're going to do. Okay. Thank you all so much. Good night. Have a lovely weekend. Okay. I'm going to push the X button. And yes, I want to stop streaming.